who have the requisite experience to actually take us through, this learning process today. And I just want us all to pay very good attention to them, because these are people who have actually honed their craft and they've mastered their craft. This morning, Dr. Odonye, Augustine Odonye, and then we have Dr. Moyosore Makinde. These are the two eminent personalities this morning that will be taking us through, knowing about our heart and then taking mastery over our health. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Augustine Odonye. Dr. Odonye Augustine Leki is an alumnus of Ladu Akintola University of Technology, Ogbomoso, Oyo State, and a member of the West African College of Physicians. He is a physician and senior registrar in cardiology subspecialty. Dr. Odonye is a result-oriented physician with interest in management of emergency medicine, risk stratification, prevention and management of cardiovascular diseases. He is motivated by providing quality medical services with particular interest in cardiology, which helps to improve the health outcome of Nigerians. Dr. Odonye is a member of the Nigerian Cardiac Society. Currently is the chief president of the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Medical Sciences Teaching Hospital in Edo State. He is a loving father, a lover of fun, and a believer in a new Nigeria. Welcome, Doctor. You're welcome, Dr. Odonye. I'm sure with that profile, we know that we are in for a wonderful session this morning. And this morning, Dr. Odonye is going to be taking us through understanding the health of our heart, understanding heart health. That's what he's going to be taking us through this morning. So, Dr. Odonye, you have the floor. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. I hope I'm audible. Hello, good morning. Am I audible?
Good morning. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you for the nice introduction. Let me share my slide. Okay. Okay. I hope I'm visible. The slide is visible.
Yes.
Okay. So good morning to the house.
We can see the slides.
Okay. Good morning to the house once again. Thank you for this privilege to discuss understanding heart health. So I have 20 minutes, and I hope the time will be enough for us to do justice to the topic in view. I think we can get started now. Okay, so this is my outline, and so let's start with the introduction. So I think it's important we actually start with what health is, and as defined by the WHO, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Okay, and then the heart is also a very vital organ, which is responsible for pumping of blood, and which also helps with the supply of oxygen and nutrients to the various tissues of the body. So for the health of the heart, that is actually based on environmental factors, what we are exposed to, okay, and also the genetics. So the genetic makeup. So if, for example, our parents have a certain heart condition, daddy has a certain heart condition, mommy has a certain heart condition, it makes us a bit susceptible to also picking up some of those things down the line, okay? And depending on our action or inactions, we also determine if we can actually have issues with the heart, okay? So taking a closer look at the picture on the side there, looking at causes of mortality worldwide, what make people die worldwide, okay? Cancer used to be a scary thing, and as you can see from the information we have here now, cardiovascular disease is topping the chart of what is actually killing people worldwide. So I think the topic of discuss this morning is an important one, and then I think we need to pay closer attention to our heart. And the cardiovascular disease is just basically a group of disease affecting the heart and the blood vessel, basically. Okay, so as we go ahead, we look more into the topic. Okay, so so I was told to also talk about heart diseases, but I think I will just pick the first two. Hypertension seems to be more prevalent in this environment, and also acute coronary syndrome, which in the English plain language is referred to as heart attack. So I think the two of them, I'll try and summarize them within the next 10 minutes or thereabout. So we also have what we call peripheral arterial disease. So the disease of the heart is not just restricted to the heart alone. We're also talking about the blood vessels, okay, the pipes that carry blood in and out of the heart, basically. So for peripheral arterial disease, I'll try and summarize the last four while we go to talk about the first two majorly. So for peripheral arterial disease, one of those signs that you could possibly look out for that you have peripheral arterial disease when you walk a short distance and you're feeling pain at the back of your leg around the calf muscle, exactly, okay? When you walk and you feel intermittent pain there, and when you stop walking and you feel a bit better, that could be a sign that you have a peripheral arterial disease, and then it would be good to visit your physician so that the needle can be done, okay? So we also have a symptomatic arrhythmia. So pardon the big English there, arrhythmia. We're just talking about abnormal heartbeat, okay? So when you have abnormal heartbeat, that is symptomatic, basically, that's just what it means. And the symptom could vary from someone having a palpitation to someone having syncopal attack, which means as in fainting, as in well like that, okay? So if you notice that your heart beats unusually, and you're not supposed to perceive your heartbeat in the first place, so if you start to perceive your heartbeat, so that means something is out of place. So you might need to visit your doctor, okay? So we also have a group of heart diseases, which is referred to as a cardiomyopathy. And for cardiomyopathy, basically just talks about abnormality of the heart muscles, okay? So sometimes the muscles of the heart could be unusually thickened. Some other times the thickness may actually be on the lower side, and they eventually will actually cause one or two issues with the heart. We also have what we refer to as congenital heart disease. So for congenital heart disease, basically just that when you give birth to a new child, okay, the process of having a heart well formed is out of place, okay, which could be due to a number of factors, okay. So maybe another thing we might be able to relate with when you listen to people talk about, oh, this child has a hole in the heart, okay. So that could be an example of the congenital heart disease. So depending on the severity of the heart disease, some of these children may not make it beyond the first year of life. And then there are other types of congenital heart disease that we might grow up with as until adult, and then before we start seeing signs and symptoms of those conditions, okay? So for the sake of today's conversation talk, I think we should just focus on hypertension and then heart attack, which we refer to as acute coronary syndrome. So before we go into those ones, I think we should talk about risk factors, okay? So what are the risk factors for heart diseases, okay? Like you can see from the screen here, there are two groups. We have the non-modifiable and have the modifiable. So for the non-modifiable, just basically means that there's nothing you can really do about it, okay? So like I said during the opening statement that if the parents have a particular maybe heart condition, let's use in this instance hypertension. If you have a father that is hypertensive, you have a mother that is hypertensive, there's a likelihood that you might also have hypertension. There's nothing you can do about that, basically. So it's a non-modifiable factor, okay? So the age is also another important factor, non-modifiable factor here, okay? So as you age, you're a bit susceptible to some heart situations, particularly like hypertension. So as you increase in age, so you might actually have issues with hypertension. Then the sex is also another important factor here. So the men might not be very lucky in this instance, okay, because they tend to actually being a man makes you a bit more susceptible to having one or two kinds of a heart condition. But for female, they during their reproductive years, they tend to have this, because of the hormones in the body, tends to have this beneficial factor, so to speak, until after the postmenopausal phase. Then the risk a woman has becomes equal to what a man also has. And also your risk also makes you susceptible to developing a number of conditions, okay? And particularly, let us just stick to hypertension, which is more prevalent in this environment. So in the Black environment, like in Nigeria now, we have more prevalence of hypertension compared to the Western world, okay? However, for the Western world, they tend to have issues with the heart attack, which you spoke about earlier on, which you refer to as acute coronary syndrome. So these are things you might not be able to do so much about, okay? We're going to the other side of the divide now, where we have the modifiable factors. So the modifiable factor means you can do something about this, okay? You can actually do something about it, and doing something about this will actually safeguard the heart. So I think I just picked a few of those modifiable factors. So one of them is obesity, okay? So how do you know if you're obese, okay? You check your weight, and your weight is in kilograms over square of your height in meters. So there are values for these. So when you have a value between 18 and 24.9, that means you have a normal weight. Okay, so if you shoot above that, as above 25, but less than 30, you are overweight. And if you are above 30, you are obese. Okay, so when you are overweight or you are obese, it will actually contribute to coming down with some heart conditions. So smoking is another critical modifiable factor, which is very, very important because it tends to damage the blood vessels. And in medical terms, we refer to that as atherosclerosis. So the walls of the pipes that carries blood to the heart and out of the heart are damaged. And this could actually be very, very significant, as we'll see as we go ahead. So alcohol is another modifiable risk factor. So I'm sure growing up, we've heard people talk about a little alcohol is good for the heart. But there's a recent study by the WHO lately now, which is advising people to stop the use of alcohol as far as the heart is concerned. So if you are not even worried about the heart, what about the liver? So alcohol is something we might need to push on the side to safeguard our heart. And the next one there is a sedentary lifestyle. So by sedentary lifestyle, it does basically mean that not having a very active physical activity. For example, you get to your office by 8 in the morning and you have to sit till like 4 when you're about going on. So there's no moving around your office environment. And this is what sedentary lifestyle is. So you're not burning the food you probably ate, as it were, and you might be storing some fat that you don't necessarily need. Okay. So another one there is the indiscriminate use of drugs. Okay. So it's very, very advisable that we don't just prescribe drugs or buy drugs from the counter on the counter and then to use them. To give an example, I know a number of times we tend to use pain relievers, and then we use paracetamol. Okay, fine. The times paracetamol may not take care of the issue you have at hand. So we might go a step further to buy diclofenac, ibuprofen, which we refer to as the NSAID. Okay, so when you use these drugs for a prolonged period of time, it might make you susceptible to having, for example, hypertension. So indiscriminate use of drugs is not something we advise. And the last part there talked about psychoactive drugs. It's a bit unfortunate that the rate at which the young population abuse drugs is a bit alarming these days. And the number of these drugs they consume can also make them susceptible to having some heart conditions. Okay, so primarily let's just talk about hypertension. So you're said to have hypertension when your blood pressure is more than 140/90. Okay, so we have two values there. We have the upper value and we have the lower value. The upper value we refer to as systolic blood pressure. The lower we refer to as the diastolic blood pressure about that. And so somebody with very high blood pressure might not be symptomatic. You might not show signs that your blood pressure is high, but that doesn't mean something is not happening down there. And like I said initially, it is commoner in the Black population. And there are two types of hypertension. We have the primary hypertension and we have the secondary hypertension. So for the primary hypertension, we're not sure what is causing it. Okay, and it accounts for about 90 to 95% of hypertension, basically. So we're not too certain of what is causing that. And the number of people have attributed the cause to genetic factors. Okay, and sometimes we feel environmental factors also. Like I said initially, if your parents are hypertensive, there's a high possibility that you might also have hypertension. Okay, so there's a second group referred to as secondary hypertension. Okay, and you tend to have this in the younger people less than 25 years old. Okay, so when you find them with high blood pressure, it is important you look out for the cause. So secondary hypertension basically means there's something likely causing this hypertension. So it might be issues with the kidneys. You might need to check the kidneys closely. It might be issues with hormones in the body, the thyroid hormone, and a few other ones. Okay. So to look out for what is causing it and to make sure it is appropriately taken care of. So looking at the chart we have here, okay. So blood pressure is the range, okay, like within 90, the upper value within 90 and then 140, and lower value within 60 and 90. So if you're, so it's good we check our blood pressures from time to time, okay. So looking at where my cursor is now, this is optimal blood pressure. This is good enough, okay. And then looking at the next level, we have 120 to 129. And the lower one is 80 to 84, which is also still normal, okay. So the one that is in between now, this is high normal, okay, which is like pre-hypertensive, so to speak, okay, because we said if your blood pressure is more than 140/90 after checking on 2 occasions and it's more than 140/90, then you are hypertensive. So when you have a blood pressure hovering around 130 to 139 for the systolic, then you might need to also take the lifestyle adjustment seriously. And those modifiable risk factors, if you have issues with any one of them, it might be important to actually make efforts to make sure we avoid whatever it is we need to avoid. Okay. So what are the challenges with having hypertension? So when you have high blood pressure that is not well taken care of, it might lead to a number of complications. Okay, so hypertension basically affects, we say it affects 5-star organs. So you just pick the organs quickly one after the other. So the brain, like you can see in the picture, okay, so hypertension can cause a stroke, which when somebody wakes up a Monday morning, Tuesday morning, and cannot lift his hand, cannot lift his legs, which is not what we want, okay? There's also what we refer to as a hypertensive encephalopathy, which is a condition where someone is confused, can have irrational talk, irrational behavior, have headache, can have convulsion. So these are what hypertension can do, okay? And then looking at the highs also, we also have what we refer to as hypertensive retinopathy, which are changes that hypertension will cause in the highs also. And I make people to lose their sight gradually if nothing serious is done about it, okay? And then to the heart of the matter today, which the heart in itself, okay? So you can have heart attack if from hypertension, if not well taken care of. And you can also have some other hypertensive heart disease and other conditions. And the end result of hypertension messing up the heart might be that an individual might have heart failure, okay? Even for the cardiac infarction, the hypertension, the two of them have a common endpoint, which is heart failure. And heart failure is a condition whereby the heart is not able to pump out blood. You know, initially I told us the heart is a pump, okay? So if the heart cannot meet up with that responsibility of pumping out sufficient blood to meet your basic needs, okay? So at that point, heart failure is coming on board. So another organ to also look out for are the kidneys, okay? Because hypertension can also damage the kidneys and cause what we refer to as chronic renal failure. And the last organ, as it were, at the blood vessels around the body. Okay. So, what are important investigations to be done if you have hypertension? To check electrolyte, which are the salts in the body, and to check for the level of what we refer to as urea and creatinine. Okay, this will help us to know if somebody has kidney, if the kidneys are affected, and somebody has what we refer to as a chronic kidney disease. Okay, urinalysis is like a test on the urine. So we're looking for abnormalities in the urine. There are things that should not be found in your urine. So when we see those things, it points us the right direction to know in what particular way to be of help to you. Also, your lipid profile, your cholesterol level, okay, your blood sugar, your chest X-ray can also show us a few things about the heart. And then there's what we refer to as the electrocardiography. Electrocardiography is we're connecting some buttons, some wires to your body. So we record the way your heart works. And it gives us a lot of information to know how best to help you. Okay. So for intervention in hypertension, lifestyle modification is important. And for those of us that are also on our medications, it's important we are mindful and that we take our medications as they're prescribed. So just a quick run through the lifestyle modifications. One is salt reduction. Okay. So I know here a number of Africans like salt. Growing up, I'm not too sure we have so much of it again. I'm sure growing up, there are times that when they make food at home and the salt seems not to be enough, people request for salt. Okay, get me salt, pour in this food. It's an habit that we should discourage. Okay, so and when we cook in the kitchen, some people prefer to use seasoning, some prefer to use seasoning with salt. So I think it's advisable we just maybe stick to one of them to reduce your salt intake. Okay. So because seasoning in itself has enough salt, okay? So and there are people who don't like to use seasoning; they just prefer their salt. It's still fine to go with your salt, but reduce the quantity of the salt, okay? So reducing the quantity of the salt intakes significantly helps with control of your blood pressure and can also lower your blood pressure, okay? So a healthy diet is also another important factor we need to look at, okay? So giving attention to intake of fruits, intake of vegetables are very, very important things to put in mind. And though we have moderation of alcohol on this table, but like I told us earlier on, there's a new study from the WHO which is discouraging the use of alcohol, which can affect the heart in a lot of ways, okay? It can cause hypertension. It can cause one of the cardiomyopathies that I showed earlier on. It can also cause a number of other things. Okay, it's toxic to the heart. Okay, so weight reduction is also another important thing we need to do. So if you check your BMI and your BMI is above 25, you need to start making effort in that direction to lose some weight by maybe engaging in more exercise. Then smoking cessation is also another very, very important factor we need to put into consideration. Apart from affecting the heart, in some other group of people might even be a cause of cancer. And for those who are struggling to just stop smoking, I think there are chewing gums that has the nicotine in them. You can stop the smoking for a while. You can switch to the chewing gum until you're able to actually phase out both the gum and then the cigarette altogether. So, like I said earlier on about sedentary lifestyle, it's important that we have more regular physical activity. And for example, the example I used earlier on, when you get to office at 8, you can tell yourself every 2 hours you walk around the office space. At least it helps you to move around and burn some calories. Okay, so these are lifestyle modifications for hypertension. However, for those of us who are already on medications for blood pressure, I advise strongly that you please adhere to the use of our medication. This is very, very important to prevent some of these complications that we spoke about earlier. So the next one I want to talk about is, I'm sure you've heard the word heart attack a number of times. I'm not sure if, let me try the screen. Let me try and minimize this. Okay, yeah. Okay, so looking at, so what is heart attack? So heart attack is from the definition we have, is caused by a reduced or complete cessation of blood flow to the portion of the myocardium. By myocardium, we mean the heart, okay? So when you have reduction in blood that flows to supply the heart itself, okay, even though the heart is pumping out blood, okay, it also has its own blood supply that helps to meet the demands of the heart, okay? So taking a look at this picture, okay, it's like we're taking a closer look, like a cut to the blood vessel in the heart itself. So that is what we have here, okay? So the red, all those red dots we have is the blood moving in the vessel, okay? And then we'll notice that there's this yellowish layer, okay? There's this yellowish layer, which is cholesterol, okay? So the cholesterol, as the cholesterol level increases, it tends to narrow the caliber of the blood vessel itself, okay? And then for those who have significant reduction in the caliber of the blood vessel, they will come down with heart attack. So that is what happens when an individual has an heart attack, okay? So the obstruction is, there's an obstruction to the blood supply, and then eventually the area distal, lower to that area, will not be supplied by blood, okay? So you can just imagine trying to tie your hand with a rope very tight for 1 hour. You will notice that your palm will change from being red to white, and if nothing is done, it might turn black, which is not something we want, okay? So looking at risk factors that can also lead us along this path, smoking is number one, like I said initially, okay, because when you smoke, you tend to damage the inner lining of the vessels in the heart. So you can imagine, apart from having cholesterol, the smoking is also damaging the inner lining, okay? So it makes the obstruction progress faster because cholesterol is doing its own beats, smoking is doing its own beats, blood pressure that is not well controlled is doing its own beats. So at the end of the day, the obstruction might actually become happen more rapidly, and then the consequence might not be very, very pleasant. Okay, so the next slide, just talking about symptoms of heart attack. I think I have a few minutes left. Symptoms of heart attack. So for individuals who have heart attack, they tend to have a chest pain. So the chest pain from the picture we have, the chest pain radiates, or can we say spread, to the left shoulder and also the left jaw. So when you have a chest pain that radiates to your left shoulder, to your left jaw, okay, and in addition to that, you may also have palpitation. Palpitation is here when you can perceive your heartbeat. You're not supposed to perceive your heartbeat, but when you start to perceive your heartbeat, okay, with the pain, and then you start to sweat profusely, then you might actually have symptoms suggestive of heart attack. And it's a medical emergency. It's not something you want to treat at home or visit the pharmacy to buy drugs. No, you have to visit the hospital, because visiting the hospital could be the difference between staying alive and dying. So this information, I think, is important, that when you have chest pain, and chest pain for whatever it is, it's not something to joke with. Whenever you have a chest pain, it's good you visit the hospital, okay? So while rounding up, so prevention of cardiac disease is very important. And then from the screen from the slides that we have there, we're talking about two preventions, okay? We're talking about primary prevention, we're talking about secondary prevention. So for primary prevention, for someone who has you don't have hypertension, for example, now you've checked your blood pressure, it's been fine over and over again, okay? You've not suffered any heart attack, you've not had a stroke before, okay? So basically, we can say there are no issues, so to speak, okay? So to ensure that we don't, we are not caught unawares, you check your blood pressures regularly from time to time, okay? Check your blood sugar, okay? Check your cholesterol, your kidney function, urine test. At least if there are no issues, you can do this once a year, such that if anything is happening, it can be picked on time, okay? It can be picked on time. So that should be done. So on the other side, second side of the divide, we have secondary prevention. So secondary prevention is particularly useful in individuals who have suffered one complication or the other that has to do with the heart. Okay, let's say, for example, now somebody has a heart attack, okay, or somebody has suffered heart failure as a result of poorly treated or poorly controlled hypertension. So the lifestyle adjustment is critical. Like I said initially, okay, the diet, avoiding too much salt, smoking, alcohol, physical activity, engaging in more physical activity, avoiding sedentary lifestyle. These are very, very important lifestyle that helps to safeguard the heart. Okay, for those who are already diagnosed with hypertension, diabetes, elevated cholesterol, it's important we use our medications. Okay, and like I put there, lastly, there we talked about regular clinic visits. Okay, so apart from using your drugs, using clinic visit is also very important. To give an instance, now somebody has a blood pressure of 200, went to the clinic, was given 2 medications, and doesn't go back again, but keeps going to the closest pharmacy to buy the drugs and to use. The BP can come down, but may not come down to a normal level. So you can drop from, you said 200, 100, so you can drop to 160, 90. It's still above 140. So the risk to develop heart disease is still, hypertension that can still damage the heart is still there. So beyond using your drugs, clinic visits are also very, very important. So in closing, the decision to have a healthy heart lies in our actions and inactions. Like we said initially, the kind of habit we engage in can determine the health of our heart. And it's advisable we do not wait too long because in this part of the world, our health-seeking habits are not so very good like that. And then people don't like to visit the hospital until when you see possibly blood gushing out from one part of your body, or you feel pain, okay? And even when the pain comes on, people wait until they can't bear it, until they come to the hospital, or people can't move any part of their body. We shouldn't wait until things are late before we make efforts. And like they say, prevention is better than cure. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Odoye, for the wonderful, wonderful presentation. He has touched on a whole lot of things. He talked about the heart. He talked about the common, heart diseases in Nigeria, which I actually find, very essential and key, for this webinar. And then he talked a lot about lifestyle modification, which is something I personally, preach, to, people. Lifestyle modification. He did a whole lot. He did a wonderful job on that. Thank you so much for, the wonderful presentation. We really, really thank you for that presentation. We'll take questions and answers after the whole presentation. But then it mentioned some tests during the course of the presentation, and all the tests that he mentioned there, all the blood tests that he mentioned there are on offer at SynLab. So kindly visit SynLab, for the tests and full blood for your fasting blood sugar, lipid profile, serum electrolytes, urea and creatinine, urinalysis, and all the other blood work that he mentioned during the course of the presentation. So this is time for me to actually introduce, my second speaker, Dr. Moyosori Makinde. She is a consultant family physician, and then she's going to be talking a lot more on lifestyle modification. I love, lifestyle modification because I feel a lot of people don't pay attention to lifestyle modification, especially when it comes to management of, heart diseases. So I want us all to be strapped in and get ready, to be taken on a very good ride by Dr. Moyosori. Now, Dr. Moyosori, as I said earlier on, is a consultant family physician and an international board certified lifestyle medicine physician at LASU Ikeja, Lagos, Nigeria. She's the national president of the Society of Life Medicine of Nigeria and the founder of Lifestyle Champions International, which is focused on medical education, coaching, and mentoring the adoption of healthy lifestyle choices in order to prevent lifestyle-related diseases. She has special interest in women's health, chronic disease management, and mental wellness, using the principles of lifestyle medicine and particularly sleep health. Fondly called Dr. Ore, she is also a gospel artist as well as an avid writer and the author of the Ultimate Sleep Coaching Guide. You're welcome, Dr. Moyosere, and we are so glad to have you for this webinar. So as I said earlier on, please let's all pay attention to her as this erudite scholar takes us through lifestyle modifications as regards health. Well, you're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I'm so privileged to be here this morning. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Dr. Makinde.
Yes.
Okay, and you can hear me clearly. So I want to say a very big thank you to SynLab for inviting me here this morning. And thank you to our audience for paying attention. And I want to thank the speaker for elaborating on heart disease and, hypertension and all those things that can prevent you from enjoying a good heart health, Dr. Augustine. So I have 20 minutes to take us through lifestyle modifications for heart health. So we want to come away from this conversation knowing what strategies we can use to ensure that we have a strong and vibrant heart. So we'll look at a brief overview of the heart. I'm not going to really talk much about it because the first speaker has already spoken about that. He's spoken about the causes of heart disease. So I will elaborate more on the strategies that we can adopt as individuals so that we can prevent acquired heart disease. It's very important for me to state that we have enough evidence to show that heart disease is a world killer. It's the biggest killer globally. According to the World Health Organization, ischemic heart disease was the world's biggest killer in the year 2020, leading to 16% of all deaths. And this was followed closely by stroke. So Dr. Augustine talked about stroke. So it's one of the things that actually results in heart disease, or heart disease can lead to a stroke. So let's look at the non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable diseases account for 71% of all deaths globally. And the very first on the list is cardiovascular diseases. So usually when we say heart disease, it covers a whole range, of diseases, not just the heart. It can affect the blood vessels. So followed by diabetes, chronic respiratory diseases, and cancer. And we have some statistics. I think Dr. Augustine had shown some of these things earlier. You can see that ischemic heart disease, as at the year 2000, we had 6.8 million people who died from ischemic heart disease, but it's increasing. So in the year 2019, it increased to 8.9 million. And you can imagine what it is right now and what it will be in another couple of years or another decade if we continue with the same lifestyle that has predisposed to this. So why is the heart so important? It's the powerhouse of the entire body. It makes sure that blood and oxygen, nutrients go round to all the organs in the body so that the role of those organs can be performed optimally. So I won't go much into this, but just to elaborate that the heart is so important. Without the heart, of course, we know that you can't maximize your purpose on earth. So the common heart diseases, which have been listed before, it can result from hypertension. So hypertension has an effect on the heart itself. Then we have a disease known as coronary artery disease, when it affects the blood supply to the heart. We have arrhythmias when the waves in the heart are not going the way it should. And sometimes you'll see this on an ECG. Then we have the valves taking blood to the heart when they're diseased. We have pericardial disease as a lining around the heart. Sometimes the heart muscle itself. Some people end up with heart failure, and sometimes it's a congenital heart disease. But today we're going to be talking about how we can prevent acquired heart disease, which embraces most of these common heart diseases. The root cause of disease is actually linked to our behavior. So heart disease is at the top of the list. We have other non-communicable diseases, like I mentioned before. But if you look at this tree at the bottom, you can see a whole lot of things: inflammation, stress, poor diet, lack of sleep, poor relationships, nutrient deficiencies, lack of exercise, genetics. So these are the factors that lead to disease. But just like Dr. Augustine said, we have the modifiable factors, we have the non-modifiable factors. We need to embrace those modifiable factors so that we can reduce our risk of such illnesses. Just to emphasize that the major predisposing factors that we have to heart disease include being overweight and obese, having belly fat. I'll talk a bit about that later. And having high cholesterol levels, hypertension, high blood sugar, and a sedentary lifestyle, as well as stress. So these are factors that can predispose to heart disease. Let me talk about the pillars of lifestyle medicine, because when we're talking about the strategies to prevent heart disease and all the other non-communicable diseases, including cancers, including diabetes, we need to put our focus on these 6 pillars. The pillar of nutrition, exercise, substance abuse avoidance, healthy relationships, stress management, and sleep. We're going to be putting emphasis on some of these strategies this morning, even though some of them have been mentioned already. So the lifestyle modifications that we ought to embrace in order to ensure a strong and vibrant heart are healthy eating, adequate physical activity, stress management, sleep health, and weight management. I'll delve into each of them a bit right now. So talking about heart healthy nutrition, many of us have been used to the concept of balanced diet. Yes, a balanced diet is very important, but now studies have shown us that a predominantly plant-based diet is really what will help to clinch some of the problems that we're seeing from lifestyle-related diseases. So there are so many diets. We have the Mediterranean diet. We even have the DASH diet, which is known as a dietary approach to stopping hypertension. So we try to incorporate those important diets into our recommendations for our patients and our clients, because most of us are used to the typical, should I say the typical Western diet, because if you look at our African diet, it actually embraces a lot of vegetables, a lot of plants, but it's the processing that goes into these foods that make them harmful. So now, what we promote is a predominantly plant-based diet. That means anything that grows from the ground. It grows from your farm, it grows from your garden, and it's going almost directly to your kitchen. So we're bypassing the factory, all the processes that remove the goodness in that meal or in that food or in that plant, because plants can also be processed. So let me give you an example of a processed fruit. And there are different levels of processing. So we have the process in which you take an orange, you squeeze the orange into a cup, and you drink the orange juice. That is a form of processing. You have done that on your own. But we also have what happens in the factory, where they take oranges and you have what they call oxygen, orange concentrate or whatever it is. And it's packed with a lot of other preservatives, a lot of sweeteners, sugar, water, and everything is put in that bottle. And then you take it to your house and you drink it, or you go to a party, you drink it. And many of us delight in many of those drinks. However, we're trying to move away from all these processed sugars, because sugar is known to be as bad as salt when it comes to heart disease. So you want to reduce your consumption, whether table sugar or added sugars that you find in chocolates, you find them in biscuits, you find them in cakes, you find them in pastries. How many of us go for events and what is handed over to you is a pack of small chops and you are excited about it? Why don't you have in mind that whenever you want to take a snack, you go for a fruit snack. You take an apple, you take a pear, you take a banana. Some people are saying it's expensive, but is it really expensive when you compare it to the cost of, producing that pack of small chops? Now, it's important for you to know that inflammation is one of the processes that come in place when we take things that are laden with sugar, salt, and oil. And that's why you want to avoid red meat as well. You want to avoid processed meats. What are the processed meats that we have in our environment? We have bacon, we have sausages, we have, what's this thing that they put in shawarma now?
Please unmute your mic. We're not hearing you.
Oh. Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Hello?
it's fine. Please continue.
Oh, okay. So when did you stop hearing me?
It's fine. Please continue, Dr. Makinde.
Oh, okay. Because I was sharing my screen. I had to stop. I'll share again. I hope it's fine to share again.
Yes, please.
Okay. Please just tell me whether you can hear me. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly.
Yes. So I was talking about the healthy food plates, and I was talking about avoidance of processed meats. And sometimes we don't feel very happy hearing some of these things, but these are the things that really cause problems for us. So some of the processed meats in our own environment, I mentioned sausages. I also mentioned we have things like suya, we have things like kilishi. So sometimes we take them occasionally, but some people every night they go out to take suya. So these are processed meats. So according to the World Health Organization, red meat is actually processed. It's actually in the category of carcinogens that has, bad as asbestos that causes, lung cancer. So we want to move away from red meats, processed foods and drinks, and take a predominantly plant-based diet. And in your plate, this is a plate here. So if you are taking your carb, your swallow, your rice, your veggies should actually be 2 times or double what is your swallow or your rice or your noodles or bread. Then you want to focus more on fish and poultry and reduce your consumption of meat. There are processed seasonings that you also want to reduce, found in cubes. You want to reduce salt. We find many of these seasonings in Iru. So for example, because you use it as a preservative, but you need to rinse it very well, before using it. Of course, fast foods, I've already mentioned that we have ketchup, mayonnaise, barbecue sauces, chips, Pringles. All of these are ways in which we get extra sodium into our diet. And remember that we're trying to prevent hypertension. If you're able to reduce your sodium consumption, then you're going to prevent hypertension, which is one of the major risk factors for heart disease, especially in Africa and even all over the world. So aim for less than 1 teaspoon of salt in your diet every day. And that means going below 2,300 milligrams per day. What are the healthier alternatives that you can choose? You can ginger powder, thyme, onion powder, garlic powder, basil leaves, ephedrine leaves. There are so many things that we can use to flavor our food so that you don't have to use many of these cubes. Then whole grains. I mentioned avoiding things going through the factory. So even our grains, if you want to make your pap, for example, instead of sieving it, why don't you cook everything together, blend it and cook it, let it be a porridge. When my mom used to do that for us when we were younger, I used to wonder, but we enjoyed it as a porridge and you retain, the goodness in it. But some of us just we throw it away to the goats and we think that we are better off than them. They are actually better off, when they eat all of that shaft. So whole vegetables and fruits, lentils, legumes, beans, reduce the consumption of processed swallows. There are so many in the market now. Take nuts and seeds. All these whole foods, they have antioxidant properties, within their outer shell or covering. And those antioxidant properties can actually prevent you from developing many of these lifestyle-related diseases. How about adequate physical activity? The first speaker had commented about it, but I need to let us know that sedentary lifestyle has been said to be the 4th leading predisposing factor to premature death globally. So the more you sit, the more likely you are to develop these lifestyle-related diseases, including hypertension, diabetes, and all those diseases that predispose you to heart disease, especially weight gain. So some people put on a lot of weight around their belly, around their middle, and they will tell you, I don't eat much, I don't really eat much. But why are they putting on weight? It's because they are seated most of the day. Then we need to meet up with the guidelines. So the guidelines from WHO say 150 to 300 minutes per week for individuals who are between 18 years and 65 years. So you want to ensure that you do 30 minutes of moderate physical activity, moderate intensity physical activity. And how do you know that what you're doing is moderate intensity? There's something that we call the talk test. So the talk test means that you are going on that activity and you cannot sing, but you can talk. So once you are able to sing, it means that it's not intense enough, no matter what your capacity is, because your capacity can actually expand gradually, depending on how much you do. So you can build up, you can start from 5 minutes a day if you haven't been exercising before. We don't want you to get out on the street and say, oh, we're told at SaneLab to exercise 30 minutes a day, and you get out there. Please start with 5 minutes, build up to 10 minutes the following week, build up gradually. And if you're not sure, or you've not been exercising before, go for exercise clearance, see your physician to be sure that you're fit to exercise. And this is going to help you with weight management. It's going to help to improve blood flow, circulation, and improve cardiovascular fitness, so that you are dashing up the stairs and you're not panting. Some of us are not fit at all because we don't move much. So make exercise fun. You can wear your earphones to listen to music. You can go on your walk with a bottle of water, with an apple, wear appropriate footwear, be regular. Don't just do it once in a week. So you can do it 30 minutes on 5 days of a week. The more you move, the more likely you are to expand your lifespan. How about sleep health? Sleep health is also very important. I like talking about sleep a lot because chronic sleep deprivation actually reduces your immunity and increases your susceptibility to disease. So we have enough studies that show us that there's an increased risk of heart disease whenever we don't sleep enough. And there's a protective effect on your blood pressure control that you gain early in the morning. So for people that don't sleep on time, you sleep 5 hours chronically, studies have shown that you're more likely to die from a heart attack. So in order to reduce your risk, you need to go along with the guidelines from the World Health Organization, 7 to 8 hours at night for individuals between 18 and 65. And even for individuals who are above 65, you want to stay with that as much as possible. It will help you also control your weight. Weight control is very important. When we sleep enough, you have the adequate quality, duration, and sleep continuity, then you will improve your blood pressure control. And then you also improve insulin sensitivity, so that anything you eat, which enters your bloodstream as glucose, is easily converted into energy and is not stored as fat around your organs. So if you don't sleep enough, it's a factor that will make you put on weight and lead to obesity as well as type 2 diabetes. If you are sleeping, you need to avoid waking up more than once at night. If you are waking up more than once at night, either to use a bathroom, it's going to affect the quality of your sleep, and it's going to predispose you to some of these problems we're talking about. So it means that what you do before bedtime, which is sleep hygiene, is something you need to pay attention to. You might not have all the time today to talk about sleep hygiene, but 1 hour before bedtime, make sure you wind down, go off your devices, put up your TV, no TV in your room, don't take walk home. So there are a lot of things that you can do to improve your sleep health so that you can optimize the quality and the duration and continuity. How about stress management? Chronic stress has been shown to lead to poor sleep as well as poor choices. So if you are stressed right now, you are more likely to reach out for a bottle of Coke, you are more likely to reach out for a meat pie, you are more likely not to be able to fall asleep at night. So poor choices are linked with stress management. And that's why we must learn the very nitty-gritty of how we can schedule our times, how we can prioritize important things and ensure that we reduce and avoid unabated stress. It's linked to poor immunity as well. It's also linked to cancers. And the fact is that by the time some of these illnesses start showing up, we found out that heart disease is more likely to occur in the presence of many of these illnesses like diabetes and hypertension. And stress largely results from life events. Some of them are avoidable, some are not. But the ones that are avoidable, we should avoid them and plan our time judiciously. Mindfulness-based techniques can also be learned to reduce stress. So there are some things that have to do with the way in which your mind processes information. Like someone said that stress is more about how you feel when you are doing what you are doing rather than how many hours you spend. So if you're happy doing what you are doing, you're likely to feel less stressed. So your body is not going to put out those stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol for prolonged periods. But once those hormones are out there for prolonged periods, then it's going to reduce your immunity and it's going to increase your risk of heart disease. So these are some of the things that we can do to ensure stress management. Spend time relaxing with your family, engage in hobbies. Some of us, there are some things we love doing. Some people love playing football. We love bicycling, but we've just put those things aside because of work. It's important that you engage in your hobbies from time to time. Spend time meditating. It can help to reduce your stress levels. Spend time in nature. I love trees. I love flowers. I love the blue sky. Go out there. Studies have shown that if you spend time in nature, in green places, you have a lower risk of dying. Organizational skills, I mentioned that before, journaling your thoughts, planning ahead of time. Now, let's talk about relationships as I'm concluding on stress. Relationships are very important. For people that don't have good relationships, they tend to end up with increased inflammation. And inflammation is anything that just increases your predisposition to disease. And we have studies that show now that divorce or separation can increase your risk of a heart attack. So you want to invest in your relationships right now. Pay attention to your loved ones right now so that they'll be there for you when you're older. But if when you get home, all you're about is your laptop, you're not concerned about what's happening in the kitchen or what is happening with the children. When you need your family, they might not be there. I've seen situations, I've seen people in hospital and no one is there for them. So it's very important that you pay attention to your relationships and avoid the risk of separation later on. Of course, if you are going through any form of domestic abuse or violence, that doesn't mean that you have to stay in the relationship. That's an indication that you need to find a way out. Otherwise, that would even make you die prematurely. But to avoid accelerated aging, cardiovascular risk, please, let's pay attention to our relationships. Work-related anxiety also increases the risk of heart disease. So you want to be in a job where you are valued, where there's premium in what you are doing, and you don't want to stay too long where you are not valued. So sometimes you need to move on. It's important for you to take note of that. And then unhealthy competition at work can lead to chronic stress. You want to avoid unhealthy competition. For those of us that love football, I know that you're not happy to hear this, but there was a study that was done, a survey that was done in Germany during one of these World Cups, and it was discovered that heart attacks actually doubled. So the way in which, if you know that when you sit in front of the TV to watch football and you're palpitating, you're not fine, please, you need to move away from it. There are some people who have made that decision and you can make the same decision as well. Stress reduction, love more. That's one of the things that we preach in lifestyle medicine. It's like a pill that you have to swallow, but it's a nice tasting pill. When you spend time with loved ones, you avoid isolation. Social isolation has been linked to inflammation. You want to avoid isolation, practice kindness, give, be a volunteer, learn something new. You can do that in an association, in a society, in a group. Learn to forgive, let go of bitterness. There was an individual who was found to have a very high blood pressure and a lot of medication was being given, and the blood pressure was not coming down. And so we had to delve into the family history. We had to delve into social history. And we discovered that he was harboring a lot of unforgiveness and bitterness. By the time I was able to let go of all this, by the time we addressed some of those background issues, the blood pressure, our risk, we can love more. Of course, substance avoidance, I'm not going to talk about this morning. Dr. Augustine had already talked about it, but there is really no safe level, for the consumption of alcohol. And of course, we know that cigarettes is a no-no. Regarding weight management, let me just share this study with us. So I saw something in the chat box earlier. Somebody was talking about BMI and belly, maybe obesity. So many of us are familiar with the body mass index. However, it's very important that we take note of what our belly is like. So central obesity has to do with a store of excess fat around the middle of the body and is a marker of abnormal fat distribution. Unfortunately, women who are in the postmenopausal age bracket tend to have an increase in, the middle age spread because of the declining hormones, which are supposed to help with the distribution of fat. So this excess fat also occurs in men. And this study was carried out, and the hypothesis was that they wanted to compare people with normal weight and central obesity and see if they would have more heart problems compared with people who had a normal weight and normal fat distribution. And so this study was incorporated individuals, over 1,000 residents in Minnesota, aged 45 years or older. And they went through this clinical examination. Measurements were taken of their height, their waist circumference, their hip circumference. And at the end of the day, they were followed up from the year 2000 to 2016 for the occurrence of major adverse cardiovascular events. Eventually, this was presented at the European Society of Cardiology Congress, and people with normal weights but belly fat were found to have an increased risk of heart disease than people without belly fat or a fat belly, even if they were obese. And they were twice as likely as well to die from a heart attack or to have procedures which required opening up of the coronary arteries or die from heart problems during follow-up. So as I conclude this morning, I want us to note that all these lifestyle practices that I've been talking about, they have a dose therapeutic effect on your health, on your blood pressure. So they are commensurate to some of the pills that we take. For example, now aerobic exercise, which means exercise that you're involved in that ensures that oxygen production or distribution to the organs is improved. And that could be brisk walking, it could be jogging, it could be swimming, it could be dancing. Brisk walking is usually the easiest to do. Moderate intensity exercise, like I mentioned before, it can reduce your systolic blood pressure by between 4 to 9 millimeters of mercury. When you restrict sodium as well, or salt, to less than 100 millimoles per day or less than 2,300 milligrams per day, like I mentioned earlier, you reduce your systolic blood pressure by 2 to 8 millimeters of mercury. Then the dietary approach to stopping hypertension, that diet also, which incorporates calcium, potassium, magnesium, and less of saturated fat. Mind you, you can't get this from supplements that you swallow. You can only get them from your fresh fruits and vegetables or your unprocessed food. It reduces systolic blood pressure by between 8 to 14. Isn't that tremendous? 8 to 14 millimeters of mercury. And then, of course, we have weight reduction. If you're able to control your weight and reduce your weight by 10 kg, you can reduce your systolic blood pressure by between 5 to 20 millimeters of mercury. It's amazing. And this is one of the reasons why you need to embrace a healthy lifestyle. You need to let go of those things that can increase your risk. And this is a summary of some of the tips that you can use to prevent an acquired heart disease. We have relaxation. I mentioned that before. For you, for your employees, for your workers, ensure that you go on leave, go on vacation, implement short breaks for exercise. Every 30 minutes, make sure you move. It's not enough to exercise 1 hour in a day, and the remaining 23 hours, you're either sitting down or lying down or sleeping. Make sure that you move around every 30 minutes once you're awake. Check your numbers regularly. So your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your blood cholesterol levels, make sure you check them regularly. See your physician, avoid self-medication, and have a wellness plan for yourself. Have a budget at the beginning of every year to ensure that you have a heart-healthy year. Optimize your nutrition, like I said before. A healthy, balanced diet, which is predominantly plant-based. Be more physically active, give up smoking, avoid alcohol, and keep all your numbers under control. So in conclusion, healthy lifestyle habits are critical to keeping a healthy heart. And I love this scripture that says that you should keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. So thank you for your attention. These are some references, and I'll be glad to take whatever questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moyosore. I thank you so much, and you've done a very fantastic job on lifestyle modification. Yeah, I mean, well, you're such a wonderful lifestyle coach. Anyways, I've learned a whole lot of things, and then there's so many things I learned, and I'm sure we all have learned too. Weight reduction, active lifestyle, no to sedentary lifestyle, no to smoking, no to fat, belly fat especially, things like that. Thank you so very much, Dr. Moyosore. And I'm sure by now, I just want to inform everyone that at the end of this webinar, there's going to be a poll. Please kindly fill the poll, at the end of the webinar. She talked about wellness. She talked about knowing your numbers. It's just as if she knows what happens at SynLab. At SynLab, we have a lot of wellness packages for you. And then we always encourage our clients to know their numbers too. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Now it's question and answer time. So we just have 20 minutes for the questions and answer. But first off, I would like to allow some people have been raising their hands, online. So let me just give them a chance to talk. All right. Grace Ohazurume, you've been raising your hand. Hello? Please, can you unmute your mic? All right. Can you unmute your mic? All right. You have just 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for the wonderful lecture. Are you hearing me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
How do you?
My question is, I normally get exhausted, especially after climbing stairs. So how do I go about it? Thank you.
I don't know if I can take that question.
Say what?
Can I
Sorry.
go ahead and answer that question?
Yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead and answer.
Okay, so I think you need to be properly evaluated. So if most of us climb stairs, we might actually be a bit tired, but I think to start from walking a distance on a plain field first. Okay, do you get tired when you walk let's say between two NEPA poles, for example? Now, okay, do you get tired? Then the stairs we're talking about, how many stairs are we talking about? You just 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? Because if you're going to do 2 to 3, you might get a bit tired, but not to the point that you can't continue the journey, so to speak. Okay, so it needs proper evaluation to also look at other things. Are you hypertensive also? And then so that we marry everything together. Then also a few other critical questions. So it might not be enough to do justice to that question here. But if you can walk between two NEPA poles and you don't get tired easily like that, I wouldn't think that the stairs should be something that should scare you. Once it's not more than 1 to 2, but if you're doing 3, 4, 5, then you will likely be tired, really.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Please, can you kindly unmute your mic? Emma Lawal.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I want to say a big thank you to the first presenter, doctor that spoke, and also the second speaker. And so my questions, the first one, when she was talking about the kind of food that people should be eating. So recently, I was seeing something online where they said that people should stop taking much of processed seed oil, like all this soya oil, granite oil, all those kind of oil. So I wanted to know, like, for instance, now I am like 45, and most of my life, you say that you eat, like when you were in school, out of school, when you are living as a single man, you want to eat bread, you want to eat bread with egg, you want to eat yam with egg, you want to eat rice, you want to fry your fish, fry your this, fry your that. So what kind of vegetable oil in Nigeria right now, if I'm in Nigeria, can one really, really eat? Some people used to say, okay, take this particular oil that has soya. And now I'm seeing somebody saying oil made from seed should be avoided. So go for Goya olive oil, go for this other oil. Then my second question is, for some time, my BP has been a bit unstable. So later on, I was told that I had one little swelling around my thyroid, which I eventually took out in LUT. So after that, I think my body weight dropped with, I used to be like, about that time I was like 80, 79. So I dropped to like maybe 76, 77, then post that surgery. Then secondly, I saw that my BP2 was just becoming very stable. But when I try to watch the BP at home with my machine, it can be telling me something like 92, 130, 135, 91, 89, 84. But when I get to the hospital where they use this,
with the question.
So when I get to the hospital, and I use their machine, it will be like 80, it will be like 70 something, maybe 120, maybe 115. So my question, the second question is, how do a doctor, so I eventually met a cardiologist some time ago, and he told me that I don't have high blood pressure, that I should even stop any high blood pressure drug that I'm using. But because of that surgery, I had to use a BP drug, because they were like, okay, so that if there happens to be any complication, I will be having issues. So I want to know, when do you really know if you really have BP issues? Because I told my BP will be reading something else, in the hospital will be reading fine with all these their mercury machine and their normal machine. So how do I really know if I really have high blood pressure issue? Then the first one is that what kind of oil can one really be using? Because I don't think I can live without at least frying egg forever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I go ahead and answer the question?
Please go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. So about oils, there is so much in the news, and on social media about oils. In fact, some people will tell you that palm oil is the best oil. Some will say it's coconut oil. So, but I actually have a list of heart-healthy oils. Most of them are, we have olive oil, we have canola oil, we have sunflower oil, So whatever the oil is really, you need to use them minimally. And so what I mean here is that you might have a heart-healthy oil, for example, but if you overuse it or you fry a lot with it, you have a lot of it in your soup, no matter how healthy it is, it's going to become a hazard for you. For example, now, if you try to fry olive oil, it's going to change the chemical composition of that oil. So at the end of the day, you're going to be taking in something, you're going to be changing something that is unsaturated to saturated fats. And when that happens, you are going to have the risk of it clogging your blood vessels. So it also depends on how much you do it and for how long you do it. Many of us, when we're younger and used to take bread and egg, we used to run around, we used to burn it. But what happens now is that if you still continue with that same diet and you sit in your office from morning till night, you sit in traffic, you get home, you sit in front of your TV, you're not even burning what you're eating. For our older folks who used to farm, their own work made them to burn a lot of calories. And so they were hardly obese, but we want to eat the same things that they were eating then, the same portions, and continue doing the same jobs that we're doing. So those two don't go together. So no matter what oil it is, it should be minimal, you should avoid frying. You can boil, you can grill, you can bake. We know we have air fryers now, So, well, they are better, but there are also some risks, that is a bit controversial, really. So, but the best way to go is to boil your food or to grill it. So that is for your question about oils. Now, another thing that you can do, make sure that when you cook your soup, your oil is not showing at the surface. I don't know how many of us have seen some videos. We see begiri. They will put the ewedu there. They will now put the begiri. They will put, the way they will arrange it, you now see oil floating by the side. I know you think you're consuming a good meal. So that, don't know. Then the other thing about your blood pressure, we usually put premium on everyone having their blood pressure monitors. So buy one for yourself and make sure that you follow certain instructions when you want to measure your blood pressure. Measure it first thing in the morning. Don't move around and go for a walk, go for your exercise and come back and say, let me even measure my blood pressure. Make sure you have been seated for at least 5 to 10 minutes. You don't have pressure to want to use a bathroom. You didn't just take a cup of caffeine, or coffee, or eat cola nuts, or to drink a cup of tea, or you just had a heavy meal and you say, oh, let me now measure my blood pressure. All those things can give you varying figures, which are not really reliable. However, when you come to the hospital and we check your BP the first time and we find out that it is high, usually we sit you down for some minutes, maybe sometimes for even 30 minutes, and say, okay, you just go and relax. Because some of us dash into the clinic, you take your blood pressure, you've been going up and down, and then you say, oh, my blood pressure is high. Then some people have what we call white coat hypertension. Just seeing me wearing my white coat, even if I'm not wearing my white coat, the mere fact that you're coming to the hospital and you have to be in hospital by 8 a.m., you might not sleep if you have white coat hypertension. You have anxiety, and that will make your blood pressure high. So you need to see your physician and work it out. You might need to do some documentation that your physician is going to look at, to be able to know whether your blood pressure is controlled, whether we need to reduce your medication or increase the dose of your medication. All right, thank you.
Thank you for the response. I don't know if I've just had a little to what my colleague has said. For the blood pressure issue, I think the issue wasn't very clear because he said he had a thyroid issue. So either hypo or hyperthyroidism can actually give hypertension, okay? And not too certain of what the diagnosis was earlier on. And if you have a neck swelling and let's assume it's a diffuse, you have your thyroid, for example, now as the thyroid levels are normal, okay? It's just for the aesthetics that they need to remove the thyroid, okay? Because you want to go for surgery, you might be anxious, so your BP can shoot up. So that may explain why they actually put you on drugs initially, okay? But if you're still having this issue, what is advisable is that maybe when you see your physician, is that there's what we call ambulatory BP monitoring, okay? There's a particular type of BP apparatus that will be connected on you for 24 hours to read your blood pressure. So we're setting exactly if there is blood pressure, if you have hypertension or not. But I think, like she rightly said, your physician will do a good job to help us determine what the issues are exactly. I don't know if it suffices to answer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Doyin. So kindly please let's move our questions into the chat box. We're actually behind schedule. So we'd like to take some questions from our chat boxes. And so this first question is to you, Dr. Doyin. Someone asked, please, if acute coronary disease is at attack, what is myocardial infarction? I'm going to ask two questions at once. And the other question is, what is heart failure and how can it be treated? The first question is the difference between acute coronary disease and myocardial infarction. And then the other one is what heart failure is and the treatment. Please, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, so for acute coronary syndrome, it's just an umbrella word to describe that various types of acute coronary syndrome. There's what we call the STEMI, the STEMI. Then to an extent, also you could have ischemia. So it's like using the same word, basically, okay? But to us, we can actually grade them as it were, but that acute coronary syndrome and cardiac infarction is like saying the same thing, basically, okay? So that's that. Then so for heart failure, so like I said initially during the presentation, let me just kind of define it in a way that you might be able to go along with it. So heart failure is just basically inability of that heart, okay, to meet your basic requirements. Let me give an example now. Let's assume normally you're able to walk between 3 NEPA poles, okay? But now to walk between 2 NEPA poles, you might need to sit down 2 times. So that could actually suggest that the heart is not strong enough to take care of your basic need, because initially you can just walk without, you can even run, okay? But now just to walk between a NEPA pole to another NEPA pole, you are feeling tired, you are feeling breathless, or when you lie down to sleep at night, you find it difficult to breathe. You might need to get out of the sleep and be breathing so rapidly. So when you have cough, those kind of breathing problems, getting tired easily, okay, then it's not impossible to think that somebody likely has heart failure. And you also put into consideration the possible cause of that heart failure. So I don't know if I'm able to do justice to that question. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, you didn't talk about the treatment, but you can talk about it in the next question that is also for you. Someone asked a question about palpitations. I guess the person has been having palpitations for a while, and the person has done a couple of tests, but all the tests appeared normal except for the heart rate, which is about 108 beats per minute. The person is trying to get your advice on that.
Okay, okay, that's still not normal because heart rate should be within 60 to 100. So if you're getting above 100, that means the heart rate is out of that range. Okay, so a number of things can cause palpitation, and then like the presentation we had earlier on, the acute coronary syndrome is just one of them. Okay, so you need to be properly investigated. I'm not sure what test you did. Your ECG is very important, and the interpretation on the ECG is also very important. Okay, so there are drugs, depending on what result we have, there are drugs you can be on to reduce that pulse rate. But we need to be sure what the ECG pattern looks like and other possible causes of increased heart rate. Okay, like the thyroid can also be a cause. So you might need to also check the thyroid gland if the thyroid gland is functioning properly, amongst other things. Thank you.
Dr. Moyosore, you can please take the questions that is directed to you from the chat box now.
All right. Okay. The last question says, I like Nescafe drink, but it causes me palpitations. Does it have an effect on my heart health? Yes, it will have an effect if you're having palpitations. What happens is that Nescafe contains caffeine. And so caffeine is known to be a stimulant. So it can increase the production of some hormones that we call adrenaline and noradrenaline, and those can increase the contractility of the heart. So anything that makes the heart beat fast like that, beyond what is really necessary, can actually, that will make your heart to, it can make your heart to enlarge, because your heart will be doing more work than it should. So for people who have high blood pressure, especially, we advise them to go off caffeine because it's one of the things that can stimulate an increase in their blood pressure. And then for people who have problems sleeping, we say avoid taking caffeine, especially after 12 midday. So because if you don't sleep well, then it's going to also affect your heart health. So I think it's something you need to be wary of. There's some people who take Nescafe and it doesn't have any negative effect on them. So you might not have to worry, but I know that there are some ECG readings in the past that I've seen where you had this tachycardia that we could only relate, to coffee consumption. So you might want to also see your physician, and if necessary, get referred to the cardiologist. Then there's a question here, help with tips on how to overcome bitterness, since as it serves as a trigger to increase in blood pressure. Well, so bitterness usually results from a hurt. If someone has offended you, someone has betrayed you. So usually it's best to just reframe your thoughts towards that person. So this person has done something that you're unhappy with. Instead of allowing the thought to stay with you, that, he did this to me, why? Or how could he? I trusted him, I believed in him. What happens is that when we keep those thoughts in our minds, they influence our emotions. So positive emotions are protective. However, when we think negatively or pessimistically about a situation or what has happened to us, and you keep on dwelling on it, it actually sends signals to your brain, and your brain will send a signal to your heart as well. And so that's why when you're betrayed, you feel a pang in your chest, not because anything happened to your coronary vessels at that time, but there was a signal. It has to do with a sympathetic response from the brain. And so what you need to do really is to reframe your thoughts. Look at what is really of value to me right now, and begin to think of those things. Begin to think of positive engagements, achievements, things that have gone well in your life, people that matter to you, the good things that you have done, and even this person who has offended you. Begin to think about situations. Okay, he did it because he didn't know this. So you give allowance, you give room for that person to say, okay, it was because of this, it was because of that. You're actually helping yourself. And when you let go of bitterness, you let go of anger, you let go of all those things that someone has done to hurt you, you're actually helping yourself. So your forgiveness does not absolve the offender, but it's going to help you to ensure that you have an improved heart health at the end of the day. Thank you. I don't know if I have any other relevant question.
Someone asked about energy drinks. That would be the last question. How healthy are energy drinks?
Okay. So energy drinks. So my own experience with energy drinks, I know one person at least that died soon after taking an energy drink. So the fact is that many of those energy drinks, they contain caffeine, a lot of caffeine, they contain a lot of sugar. Some contain some other stimulants, we don't know what. But I have encountered someone who had a seizure, soon after taking, an energy drink. So there are really a lot of downsides, to energy drinks. But even if you don't have any of the extremes, like having a seizure or maybe having something go on that would take the person's life, the content, the high sugar content is something that you want to avoid. So anything that comes in a can, anything that comes in a bottle, as much as possible, you want to avoid, so that you can reduce your risk of hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and of course, heart disease. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much to our dear presenters and to everyone who participated, in this webinar. We've come to the end of the webinar now. Kindly follow us, STEMLab Nigeria, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. We're also on YouTube. Also, this webinar, you can stream it, after this particular session. You can actually watch it on YouTube. So do not forget to subscribe to our channel, to STEMLab, Nigeria on YouTube. And also, do not forget to keep a healthy lifestyle, keep your heart healthy, and also to know your numbers. Encourage to also know your numbers. And then also I'd like to remind you once again that all these tests that has been mentioned, all the blood tests that have been mentioned during the course of this webinar are all on offer at STEMLab Nigeria. So we'd like to thank all our presenters once again, and everyone who participated, in this webinar. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
What I'm saying is that he has already. Let me just say it.